Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Lydia and I have just finished my 4th year of medical school, and today I really wanted to wrap up the 4th year content by doing a review of the year and talking about the exams, the placements and everything in between, and really just give you my tips and tricks for 4th year, things I've learned, and answer all your questions as well. Today's video, very excitingly, is in collaboration with a favourite of mine, KenHub, so thank you so much to KenHub for sponsoring today's video. I'm actually partnering with them to bring to you a very exciting giveaway to celebrate the end of the year. So before we get started, I think we'll get straight into the giveaway. If you haven't heard of KenHub already, they are a subscription-based anatomy revision and learning website. They got me through the earlier years of medical school when I was learning anatomy, and even now in the clinical years when I feel like I need to refresh my anatomy knowledge, they are always a website I turn to. Today KenHub wanted me to tell you about their brand new, very exciting merch store that they have recently launched. If you head to their website, you'll see they've got so many different things on their merch store, from posters to notebooks, calendars, bags, mugs, everything you could think of, all anatomy themed. Perfect if you want to be decorating your halls or you just love anatomy themed merch like me. Obviously, if you're about to start a new year of uni, the perfect way to get organised. So definitely go and check out their merch store. I will link it in the description. And I'm really excited because I've actually been sent some of the merch today to unbox. I picked 3 things from their website and I am very excited about these 3 things. I haven't opened them yet, so we're going to do it together. First of all, I've got this longer looking package, which I'm pretty sure is the poster that I picked. So they've got lots of different anatomy style posters, and I thought I would pick one out to put up in my hospital accommodation for final year. So in final year, I'm staying in the same place for 6 months, and we get given these rooms that are like, you know, like halls, like university halls. I've stayed in this particular place before, so I know that it's got a wall where you can put kind of posters and things up, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice to decorate my new bedroom and make it feel more homely? So I've gone for a poster. Oh, how exciting! Okay. Now, I don't think I'm going to be able to fit it all in this shot, so maybe I need to zoom out. Basically, it is a ginormous anatomy poster of the eyeball. Now, if you watched my exam season videos, you'll know I really struggled with ophthalmology, but I was determined to get better at it and do well in the exam, and in the end I did alright in the ophthalmology questions actually. So I thought I'm going to celebrate by getting an eyeball poster, and I'm going to put it up in my new accommodation so that I can continue to test myself on eyeball anatomy and also the visual pathways, because at the bottom here, where is it? We've got my favourite diagram to draw out again and again is the visual pathways of the eye. Yeah, not going to be able to fit all this in, but as you can see, they have lovely colourful posters with all your favourite anatomy diagrams on. Next, I'm very excited about this. I have picked out one of their phone cases, and I think this must be the phone case. Oh, guys! So I picked out one of their anatomy phone cases. Isn't that so cute? I'm going to be the envy of everyone on placement, I think, when I show it with this. So it's one of those like hard shell ones as well, which is perfect because I'm always dropping my phone. How cute is this phone case, guys? I'm obsessed. The last thing I got is actually available in a hard copy and also as an ebook, but KenHub now have their very own printed atlas of human anatomy. So it is all the diagrams from their website, beautifully printed in book form, and I decided that I really needed to invest in a proper anatomy atlas for final year. I'm doing surgery placement in the middle of the year, so I know that I'm going to need to brush up on anatomy in particular then. But this is what it looks like. It's quite thick, but it's not that heavy actually. You could definitely throw that in your bag and take to placement. But this is just a flick through. It's got diagrams, it's got tables, it's got very clearly labelled pictures, and yeah, it looks great and I can't wait to use this in final year. Those are the products that I picked up. Now let me give you the giveaway details. KenHub have given me two $50 vouchers for 2 of my subscribers to spend on their merch store. All you have to do to enter is make sure you are subscribed to this channel and leave a comment below with your best study tip. Now, I don't mind what this study tip is. It can be really simple or it can be really complicated step by step. It can be creative. I will pick my 2 favorite tips. Doesn't necessarily have to be something completely mind-blowing and off the wall, but I will pick my 2 favourite tips. And those 2 comments will be the winners and they will win a $50 voucher each to the KenHub merch store. Hello, it is Editing Lydia here. I just wanted to add something very important, and that is that the giveaway closes on Saturday the 3rd of August at midnight, and I will announce the winner in my upload on Sunday the 4th of August, so make sure to come back here to find out if you are one of the winners. KenHub have also shared with me a discount code for their anatomy subscription, so I'll pop that in the description as well if any of you guys are looking to restart your subscription or start using KenHub for the first time. I will leave all the instructions and the full rules and terms and conditions of the giveaway in the comments, but get commenting because you don't have very long. I'm looking forward to seeing a comment section full of inventive and groundbreaking study tips. Straight into it, the first part of the year that I want to talk about was the exams. In 4th year at Southampton, we sit something called the Applied Knowledge Test, and this is basically a single best answer exam made up of 190 questions on all the placements that we do in 4th year, but they also throw in questions from 3rd year, so general medicine, surgery might come up, but definitely not as much as the placements from 4th year. Questions come mostly from a bank from the UK MLA checklist and that whole exam body, but the faculty also wrote some questions to put in the exam themselves. I wasn't really able to tell the difference between faculty written questions and official UK MLA questions. Some people definitely came out of the exam and thought that they could tell the difference. My main worry this year was definitely the amount of content we have to learn, and when I've put out asking for questions for this video, at least 5 or 6 people came back and said they're worried about the amount of content you have to learn in 4th year, and believe me, that was a big worry for me too. In 4th year at Southampton, you do obs and gynae, you do psychiatry, you do peds, you do so much medicine that you've never even covered really before, other than in a few lectures maybe in 1st and 2nd year, and maybe you've come across some peds in GP while you're in 3rd year. But at Southampton, 4th year is definitely the year where you take on so much new information. Also throw into that, in Southampton we have speciality week, so we have neuro, ENT, derm and ophthalmology all in a month, and we do a week of each of those, and that was a really intense 4 weeks. Saying that, my overall strategy seemed to work throughout the year, and that was whatever placement I was on. So for example, I had 8 weeks of psychiatry to start with. I would try and cover all of the learning and pass med as much as possible in that 8 weeks, so that when I finished the placement I had already done a lot of practice questions and was already in exam mode for that placement. I would give myself time to look up all of the content and conditions that we were expected to know for psychiatry, and then I would test myself with pass med. Rather than waiting till closer to exam season, I was doing pass med and ques med throughout the year. And you know, life does get in the way, and I definitely didn't complete all the pass med for every placement we did, but it was just the intention of getting as much practice as possible done while you're on the placement. And it also helps when you're on placement, because obviously when you're getting grilled by consultants, you've been revising and learning, so it's just a bit easier and you're probably more likely to get the question right under pressure. Definitely didn't happen every time, but I definitely felt myself like I had some knowledge when I was on the placement. I wasn't just learning on the placement. And the study kind of routine that I swear by is start with the UK MLA curriculum map, which lists all of the conditions and presentations that we are expected to know, and I use that to guide my learning. And then I use certain websites and lectures to teach myself. So Zero to Finals is so good. Teach Me X, so there's lots of Teach Me Obs and Gynae, there's Teach Me Pediatrics, there's Teach Me Anatomy. Also swear by using my Oxford Clinical Handbook. I also loved using YouTube videos to teach myself, my favourites being osmosis videos, and another one called Dirty Medicine was really good. Like, his videos for psychiatry were so clear and succinct. I also do make use of the Pass Med textbook and the Ques Med textbook. I would make my notes using all of these resources. I'm very regimented with my notes, and I'll put some images of my notes here, because so I get all my notes together and then I just do past med and quest med, and that is literally it. That is how I teach myself the content and how I get ready for the exam. In the 2 weeks leading up to the exam, I would do the mock exams the uni gave us. I would do so many past med and quest med questions till I couldn't concentrate anymore. Also, we of course had teaching and learning and tutorials throughout the year while on placements. Teaching quality and amount can vary from placement to placement and which centre you're at, and that's just luck of the draw, and that means that you do have to teach yourself stuff sometimes. I feel like I'm at a place now I'm really happy with my study routine. I feel like I know what I need to do to get those exams passed. I also have some questions about my study methods that I wanted to go through quickly. Thank you guys for sending those in. How do you manage time with revision? So I'm a big believer in checklists and mapping out my time, and if you watch my how I plan my study timetable or revision timetable video, I basically show you how I know when I'm going to revise what when, and I'm just about mapping out my week. I use my diary, I use my calendar. I know when I'm on placement, hopefully most of the time I do, and I know the hours roughly I'm going to be doing, so I just have to plan my revision in between that. I think you need to decide, are you a morning person, are you an evening worker, are you going to do an hour before placement, are you going to do an hour after? And also remember that when you're on placement, there are going to be times where someone's going to send you away because there's too many medical students, or something's going to get cancelled, and you're going to find 2 or 3 spare hours in the day, and that's when you've really got to make the most of it and get that revision done. Did you change any of your study methods this year? Only that I did more past med throughout the year rather than cramming it all in the last 2 or 3 months before the exam. I was just constantly doing past med. I also think I was probably a bit better at targeting my revision. So for example, I knew I was really bad at ophthalmology. I kept getting like 30%, 40% on past med, and I just made it my mission to be good at it. And I did so much ophthalmology revision, and then I ended up getting 100% in the ophthalmology questions on the exam. There was only like 5 or 6 questions. That 1 mark could be the difference between you passing and failing. So everything is so important, and don't just focus on those topics that you enjoy. Is 4th year the hardest? I think in terms of like how much you have to learn, it was probably the hardest. There was so much to get through and so much new ideas and concepts I had to take on board. If you've got a good routine going from your 3rd year, your first clinical year, then I think 4th year is okay. I know at some unis they sit OSCEs and finals in 4th year, but at Southampton it is purely that exam really, other than the essay we had to write. I think if you've got this far and you've adjusted to learning clinical medicine, you'll be fine. How do you manage long study sessions? Taking lots of breaks, going to chat to my friends if they're about, having a good lo-fi playlist or soundtrack. My favourite soundtrack this year have been Challengers, Oppenheimer, Dune, and a favourite of mine that I always listen to in exam season since A-levels is the Interstellar soundtrack. I can't listen to music with words, although Billie Eilish's album did come out like a few days before the exam, and I was listening to that back to back. So I always had a treat planned for myself at the end of the day, whether it was something sweet or I knew I was going to watch something with Jack, go to the cinema occasionally, or we go to Nando's. Like, we had things planned so that I felt like at the end of a long day of revision I'd earned that break. Right, so the second part of this video is all about the placements in 4th year. But before you've even sat the exam, you have to pass, I think it's 8 placements technically in 4th year. So you're constantly being assessed, you're constantly having to jump through hoops. Also at Southampton we have these wonderful things called ACCs, and you have to do 9 of those in 4th year. They are very scary, and every placement pretty much, other than specialities, you have them. So it's constantly on the back of your mind that you have an ACC coming up. You can repeat the ACCs in your final year, but ultimately you want to get them passed so that you don't have to worry about that again. I know other unis have something similar. It's basically where a consultant assesses you seeing a patient, you take a history, you do an examination, and then you talk about management plan and differentials afterwards with the consultant, and you have to basically be assessed that you're working up to a standard that they would expect of an F1 doctor. It's scary, and you have to do them at least 9 times in 4th year. I know this is Southampton specific, so I won't dwell on it too long, but my main tips for the ACCs are: make a good impression, look very presentable and smart when you arrive. If you can, meet the consultant who is doing your ACC in advance of the ACC. Like, if you know they're doing a ward round and you've been allocated an ACC with them later in the placement, try and get on their ward round so you can build up a rapport with them. I just think it's a bit better if you know what kind of doctor that doctor is and what their kind of style is. Maybe it will help you in your ACC, so if you can, but if you can't, don't worry. I didn't meet all of the doctors who did my ACCs with me. Be well prepared, so make sure you have, you know, your stethoscope, pocket watch. The history is probably the most important part. Make sure that you take a really good history. When you do examination, have a really good go at it, just be confident with it. I know in pediatrics I did an ACC and the consultant did step in to help me because it was a really small baby and I barely handled any small babies. Still done most of the examination, but he stepped in at the end just to show me one part of the examination, and I didn't fail. I mean, he gave me a good grade, and I think he just said, you know, I didn't want you to do it wrong. So you don't have to do a perfect head to toe examination, but just make sure that you have a system in place. You talk through what you're doing and why, like an OSCE basically. Make it OSCE standard and you'll be fine. Then in the talk after, just be confident with your answers about the differentials and the management. If you're kind of saying like, oh, maybe all out, like if you don't seem too confident, then I think they're going to pick up on that. You're not going to fail if you get it wrong, but I think it's just about being confident. And remember that if you do not do well in one, don't worry, because there is another chance to do them at finals. So let's do a quick whistle stop tour of all the placements I did in 4th year. So my first placement was psychiatry. I did that in Poole, and that was my first experience staying in hospital accommodation. Obviously my experience was a little bit different, maybe because my family live in Poole, so I was 10-minute walk from my mum and dad's house. I did stay in the accommodation though, and it was fine. My psychiatry placement, I was on a psychiatric intensive care ward, so the patients were mostly sectioned for 6 months or 1 month. It was like no other placement I've been on before. I had a really lovely consultant on that placement. I never went anywhere really on the ward without him, so I never felt unsafe. And we did have training before the placement in self-defense. We did get given alarms to carry with us, all that kind of stuff. So it was definitely like no other placement I've experienced. And I even went to the police station with him on my first day, like literally my first day of placement. One of the things that reminded me like how lucky you are as a medical student, you can just go in the morning and not know what your day is going to look like, and you might get to go and experience something completely new and just be a fly on the wall, and your only purpose there is to learn, and you just get to do that. And I just think it's such a privilege. What I would say with psychiatry is that everyone had very different experiences. So my placement buddy was actually on the elderly care ward, so she was kind of becoming more an expert in things like dementia and Alzheimer's and depression in old age, whereas I became more confident in things like mania, bipolar, schizophrenia, and all the treatments for that. So your experience on placement can be very different, can't it? But we also did taster days, so I did get to go and work with other doctors and other wards, but my main kind of base was that intensive care ward. Really liked psychiatry actually, and it surprised me because I didn't think I was going to be that into it, and I really enjoyed it. That's to say, despite everything that was going on outside, my dad passed away in the 5th week of that placement, and his funeral was the day after the final day of the 8-week placement. So the second half of the placement, to be honest, I, you know, wasn't totally with it, and I missed a week and a half. The placement was so understanding and brilliant with me about it, and like, you know, they actually wanted me to take more time off, but I wanted to get my ACCs done in that final week, and I did. I don't really remember them, and it was all a bit of a blur. Overall, I would definitely consider doing psychiatry as one of my foundation year rotations. I'd love to give it another go and like actually get into it more when I'm in a better place. The only thing that was a bit of a pain on psychiatry was we had to do case studies. We had to do 8 case studies over the 8 weeks, I think it was, and we had to present one at the end, and we wouldn't know which one we had to present to a panel of consultants. We had to find 8 different patients and write case studies about them, and it was just kind of a lot of work. And then obviously the final day of the placement, we had to present our case, and we didn't know which one it was going to be, so that was a bit scary, and it was a bit of extra admin. Then I went straight into my speciality week. So these are the dreaded 4 weeks of just one different placement every week, and you have to pass each week, and you're kind of assessed by your attendance, and you have a quiz at the end of the week. And they were very strict on attendance in those 4 weeks, so I knew people who failed a week for missing 1 out of 5 days of the placement. So I had quite a lot obviously on my plate at that point. Dad had just died, and I had to go in every single day for 4 weeks. A lot of it was lecture based, so we did a lot of teaching in the lecture theatres, and then we would kind of have sort of a morning of lectures, and then you'd be given an afternoon in clinic, an afternoon in theatres, a morning here. So it was very like structured with a lot of teaching, and I found myself in lectures kind of disassociating a lot because I was not in a great place, and there was a lot of content to take on board, so I did have to pay attention because we had quizzes at the end of the week to pass the placement, and they weren't like super difficult. Like, for example, the ophthalmology quiz was literally a Kahoot, whereas the neurology quiz was like a multiple choice exam. So they had very different ideas of what that assessment looked like, and it was kind of up to them. Feels like a lot, but the exam is gonna reflect the fact that there was only 4 weeks of it. So for example, we did a week of ENT, and in the exam at the end of the year, I'm pretty sure there was maybe max 5 questions on ENT. So it's not going to form the bulk of your assessment at the end of the year, but it's just good to know the basics and the key conditions. Although neurosciences, I would have liked to have had a longer placement. Like, I know at some unis they do 4, 6, 8 week placements in neurosciences and neurology. I think we had one day cancelled because of a storm as well, so we did get one day off. Then I moved on to acute care, so that was a 4-week placement, but one of the weeks is lectures, and I was based in Bournemouth for 3 weeks, and I stayed in the accommodation there. I really loved the accommodation at Bournemouth. If any Southampton students out there are going to Bournemouth, I really liked the accommodation there. It was just quite nice. It was a shared bathroom, but that didn't really matter to me because the difference between Bournemouth and Poole is Poole didn't have a social area in the flat, so it was a bit more isolating, whereas in Bournemouth we had a living room, we all used to watch telly together. Acute care I really enjoyed. I think the highlight for me was a week in the ICU. The teaching on the ICU was so good, and I think that's because they have to be really well staffed in the intensive care unit, and therefore there were more staff, therefore they could teach medical students more. And I just remember getting some really good teaching that week, got loads of sign-off, just learnt so much. And there was one doctor in particular, he was so good and he did so many sign-offs for us, taught us so many skills. I got all my cannulas done that week. Going into the emergency department was interesting because I was based on the ED the final week before Christmas and the week of junior doctor strikes. It was a bit chaotic, and I feel like maybe I could have had a better week to go there, but I'm hoping to do some more emergency medicine later in the course, so hopefully I'll get more of a chance to experience that. And that whole placement was the best for getting sign-offs. I think I got like 30% of my book, 40% signed off on that placement. Then we had Christmas break. Moving into January, I came back and I had 8 weeks of obstetrics and gynecology. We had 2 weeks of teaching at the start, and it was also a genitourinary medicine placement as well, where we had a few days of teaching on that. We also had 3 ACCs on this placement. We had to do tutorials a lot on this placement. I did my first night shift on this placement on the labour ward. This was another one of those placements where I felt so privileged to be a medical student and get to do what we get to do. I mean, being able to witness human life coming into the world was mind-blowing and just so cool. I think that as a female medical student, I maybe found it easier. Some of the guys in my placement were finding it more difficult for women and mums to say, yeah, you can come in and see the birth. So I think just bear that in mind. I know my mum said that she had a male medical student watch me be born, so it, you know, women do agree. So if you're a guy, like, it might just be a little bit more difficult. My tip for that would be to go in more antisocial hours. For example, on the night shift there's just less medical students about, and in the evenings there's less medical students about, so you're just more likely to get that chance. I was based at Southampton for this placement as well, so it was a very busy tertiary centre. It was actually featured on One Born Every Minute, so it's a very well-known labour ward and maternity hospital, so it was quite exciting to be part of somewhere like that for 8 weeks. And the gynecology side of it as well was really good. My consultant who signed me off was a gynecologist, and he was great. He was very laid back, which is always handy. I had one nightmare day where I went into theatres at 7 AM, so I got there at like 6:30. I needed to get a procedure signed off, so I was waiting for this full theatre list, and I was told, don't worry, you'll definitely get your sign off. And for whatever reason, I think the first 3 patients of the day declined me doing this procedure, so I ended up getting there at 6 AM or 6:30 AM, and it was only the final patient on the list that agreed, so I stayed until 5:30 PM that day, and I got to, you know, scrub in and see lots of different procedures. But it's just them days where you think you're going to get a sign off and you've got your plan and it just doesn't go to plan. I do remember that, that sticks in my mind. But, you know, for one bad day there's another really great day. Like, there was one day where I got to assist with the cesarean section, and that was just amazing. Like, to be able to be the second person doing the cesarean. So yeah, some really cool and interesting learning experiences on obs and gynae, and definitely one of my highlights of the year. Then last but not least, my final placement was paediatrics, or child health as it's called, and I did that at Southampton as well. I was supposed to be placed at Dorchester for this placement, but when my dad was unwell, I was in contact with the pastoral team, and they kind of said to me, like, there's not much we obviously can do, but is there anything we can do? And I said, well, I've got this placement in Dorchester, it's quite far away from my support network, and is there any way I can be somewhere more central for paediatrics rather than in Dorchester? So they moved me to Southampton for paediatrics, which I was really grateful for, and it also ended up being a really amazing placement. The teaching was brilliant on that placement, I thought. I mean, obviously you're learning a completely new speciality from scratch, so I think the first week or two of peds was teaching. We also did a lot of community paediatrics, which I became really interested in, and I'm actually doing a student selected unit in child community health coming up this year. I think for me, what I like about paediatrics is that you could be seeing one patient one minute who's like a newborn baby, and then you could be seeing one the next who's a teenager, and there's just so much going on, it's so different. But for me, that was my favourite placement, and I think it might be what I want to go into, but I'm definitely keeping an open mind, because I think that I want to experience different jobs as a doctor before I start going around saying this is what I want to do. The ACCs for that though, so scary. They took them really seriously. That's not to say they didn't take them seriously on other placements, but Southampton ACCs for P, they sat us down and did a lecture on it, and at this point I was like, well, we've already done 6 ACCs, why do we need to have a lecture on ACCs? But they kind of laid out their expectations for the ACCs, and when I tell you I was grilled so much in one of them, I remember just being like, oh, I've definitely failed this, and I hadn't. Also at this time was when we were building up to exams. To be fair to Southampton, for paediatrics, on our timetable they would make it so we'd have the odd morning or afternoon off, and they said that was so that we could, you know, do private study. So I didn't feel too stressed, but I did feel stressed, do you know what I mean? Like, it was a stressful period. And now I've rambled for an age, I just want to answer a few questions I've had about placement. How does it work with housing? Do you get accommodation when you go to placement? At Southampton, and I think most unis, if you're on placement outside of your university town or city, you get accommodation given to you for the duration of your placement. You have to apply for it, but they give you notice and instructions on when to do that and how. I think the accommodation is really good because obviously you are going to be doing a lot of early starts, and it means most of the time you get to live on hospital site and don't have to commute really far. But some people did commute if they wanted to, because some people, you know, are really into their sports teams in Southampton, or, you know, want to go out in Southampton more and have the uni life and not miss out on that. And I would obviously go back and see Jack on the weekends because we were apart in the week. Rank specialities you do as a career. So if we go off 4th year, on the top we've got paediatrics, then I would put psychiatry. 3rd I would put obs and gynae, purely because of the lifestyle, you have to do a lot of night shifts. Then I would put acute care because I liked the buzz. Then dermatology, and anything above this I actually quite enjoyed, but then now we're in the area where I didn't enjoy. So underneath dermatology we've got neurosciences, ophthalmology, ENT. So that's my order. Just finished 3rd year, so how is it different to 3rd year placements? Are they more intense? I think mostly they're the same. Definitely towards the end of 4th year, if the consultant or doctor or whatever knows that you're coming to the end of 4th year, they'll start to say things like, oh, you're going to be in final year soon. Oh, not long till you're a doctor. Oh, it's a year to go. So the pressure builds as the year goes on, but in terms of placement and what you're expected to be able to do and know, I didn't feel that different to 3rd year. I felt more confident on placement because I'd been there before and knew what was expected of me. And I think I was better at seeking out opportunities than I was in 3rd year because I was more confident. But ultimately, nobody really knows who you are, do they? Unless they are involved in the course. Some random doctor you meet on the ward round doesn't know who you are, whether you're a final year or a 3rd year. And when they ask you and you say 4th year, I think at least you're not a final year, do you know what I mean? I think when I start saying final year, that's when maybe I'm going to feel the pressure a bit more. Any tips for staying in accommodation? You might think that 8 weeks in accommodation isn't very long, but it does, you know, it is quite a large chunk of time. So make it homey in your accommodation if you can. Bring your home comforts, decorate it a little bit. Remember not to lock yourself out, and always carry your key on you if you're at Bournemouth, because I locked myself out quite a few times there. The accommodation is really nice when you have a flat of other medical students, because you can all come home and debrief after your day on placement, and it also means you get to know people who you might not already have known or are as close with on the course. The only other part of 4th year was the medical ethics module, and we had lectures throughout the year for that, and then we had to write an essay at the end of the year. And all I'll say about that is it just is a little bit of a nuisance when you're trying to revise for exams. If you're at Southampton, just go to the lectures, go to the medical ethics lectures. They'll tell you everything you need to know, and don't stress about it. So that's it. That is 4th year of uni. Obviously, personally for me, not a great year outside of medicine, but the course itself, I think that was my favourite year so far. Being on placement the whole year and getting to experience new parts of medicine, getting to go outside of Southampton. I quite enjoy going away for placement. I think it's a bit of an adventure. I like a change of scene. Well done if you've made it to the end of this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you found it useful. Final year content begins next Sunday, so I will see you then for another video. Bye!